Body Knows episode 6, Gaslighting the Body. Welcome back to The Body Knows. In this series, we've been exploring the ways our nervous system tells the truth about our lived reality, even when the world insists otherwise. In the last episode, Pleasure, Pain, and the Dopamine Trap, we saw how behavior is shaped not only by language, but by the chemistry of reward and punishment. We traced how dopamine, cortisol, and oxytocin form the body's behavioral currency, how manipulators hijack those cycles, and how rituals in cults or relationships become addictive. That episode ended with a crucial realization. The body is not passive. It knows when joy is nourishing and when it is conditional. It knows when it belongs to steadies and when it hooks. But what happens when that knowing itself is attacked? What happens when the body sends signals, tightening in the chest, gut twisting, tears rising, jaw clenching, and someone tells you those signals are wrong? What happens when, after harm has been done, the response you receive is, "You're overreacting"? Why are you angry? It wasn't being abusive. You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. I never said that this is gaslighting. And it is one of the most insidious forms of abuse because it doesn't just harm you in the moment. It trains you to distrust your own nervous system. Gaslighting was first named after the 1944 film Gaslight, where a husband manipulates his wife by dimming the lights in their home, then denying it when she notices. She begins to question her perception, then her sanity. Today, the term has become shorthand for psychological manipulation, but its true power lies in what it does to the body. At its core, gaslighting is not just lying. It is a systematic attempt to override your perception of reality. And the first battlefield where this plays out is not in the mind. It is in the body. Think about it. The nervous system is wired to detect safety and danger. Stephen Porges calls this neuroception, the subconscious scanning of the environment for cues. When someone yells at you, dismisses you, or crosses your boundaries, your body reacts instantly. Heart racing, stomach clenching, and shoulders tensing. You may not even have words for it yet, but your body knows. Gaslighting begins when someone denies that knowledge. It wasn't like that. You're imagining it. You're crazy. They will even deny experiences of your experiences from the past. I told of an incident where an ex-partner laid their hands on me in an aggressive manner, and they pulled my arm, and gave me a Chinese burn as I tried to pull away. They were not even there, and they denied my personal truth. No, that never happened. Why would I lie? That was a very painful denial of my reality. It leaves you perplexed. The words collide with the body's truth. The nervous system screams danger, while the narrative insists safety. That conflict creates cognitive dissonance so intense that many people resolve it by doubting themselves. Over time, repeated gaslighting teaches the body to suppress its own signals. Tears are swallowed. Gut instincts are dismissed. The freeze response becomes a way of life. Some people even lose the ability to name their feelings, a condition psychologists call alexithymia. Others dissociate, leaving their body entirely because it has become too painful to live in a system where signals are constantly invalidated. This is why gaslighting is not just emotional cruelty, it is nervous system abuse. In this episode, we're going to explore that abuse in depth. We'll begin by breaking down what gaslighting does to the body, step by step. We'll look at the tug-of-war between felt truth and imposed narrative, and why the vagus nerve, the body's great social regulator, gets caught in the crossfire. Then we'll move into a scenario many of you will recognize, being told, "You're overreacting, it wasn't abuse." We'll walk through that moment in real time, tracing the nervous system's signals, the psychological conflict, and the identity fractures that follow. From there, we'll connect this to the psychology of gaslighting, cognitive dissonance, attachment dynamics, and trauma theory. We'll see why gaslighting is most effective in close relationships where love and belonging are on the line. We'll then widen the lens to systemic gaslighting. Because this isn't just personal, it's cultural. Governments, media, and institutions have all said in one form or another, "It's not that bad. It didn't happen. You're paranoid." This is why gaslighting is one of the key tools of control at every level of society. Philosophy and spirituality will guide us too. Hannah Arendt on the erosion of truth, Arida on destabilizing meaning, Zen Buddhism on trusting direct experience over concepts, mystical traditions that name the inner voice as sacred, indigenous perspectives that root truth in embodied connection to land and ancestors. Each offers a way of understanding why trusting your own signals is both radical and necessary. I'll share reflections from my own life, times when I was told I was too sensitive, when I felt danger in my body, but was assured everything was fine. Times when the denial was more painful than the harm itself, because I know what it feels like to collapse under the weight of conflicting realities, and I know what it feels like to slowly reclaim trust in the body's knowledge. And finally, we'll end with practices, ways to rebuild that trust, to reality check your perceptions, to name the signs of gaslighting, and to remember, your body never lies. Gaslighting is devastating not because it changes reality, but because it makes you doubt your own. And here's the most important truth we'll hold throughout this episode. The body always knows. Gaslighting only teaches us to stop listening. Let's begin what gaslighting does to the body. To understand gaslighting, we need to look beneath the words. The words are the surface, but the real damage happens in the body. When someone says, "You're overreacting," or "That didn't happen," they aren't simply lying. They are creating a direct conflict between your nervous system and the imposed narrative. The nervous system's truth. The body knows danger before the mind does. This is what Stephen Porges calls neuroception, the subconscious scanning of the environment for cues of safety and threat. Your stomach clenches, your chest tightens, your voice falters, your breath shortens. These are not overreactions, they are survival signals. When harm occurs, whether it's verbal aggression, silent treatment, triangulation, or outright abuse, your nervous system responds instantly. Cortisol rises, heart rate increases, the vagus nerve tightens, preparing you for fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. In a healthy environment, those signals would be validated. Someone would say, "I can see this hurt you," or "Let's talk about what just happened." The body would discharge the energy, reset, and return to balance. But gaslighting interrupts this cycle. The gaslighting collision. Imagine. Your body screams danger, but the words you hear insist safety. You're imagining things. It wasn't like that. You're too sensitive. The words collide with the body's truth. The nervous system is on red alert, but the narrative says, "Stand down. Nothing's wrong." This creates a conflict so intense that the mind often resolves it by turning against the body. You start to doubt your own signals. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe my gut is wrong. Maybe I can't trust myself. That doubt is the goal. Gaslighting doesn't just silence you in the moment. It trains you to silence yourself in the future. Case study, gaslighting of gaslighting. Let me bring this into lived reality. I was once in a relationship with an individual who gaslighted me continually. At first, it was the typical denial and minimization, twisting stories, rewriting events, making me question my memory. But then it escalated into something I had never experienced before, the gaslighting of gaslighting itself. Here's how it unfolded. I became so concerned with their behavior, especially how they tried to triangulate me with people I'd never even met, that I began to record conversations. I didn't do this lightly. I did it to preserve my safety and, if necessary, to have evidence for a non-molestation court order. When I played back those recordings, the evidence was undeniable. Their words and actions were right there, factual, preserved. I would show them the recordings thinking, "Finally, I have proof. Finally, they can't twist this." But what shocked me most was what came next. They denied even the recordings. They dismissed the evidence. They told me I was still overreacting, still imagining it, still blowing it out of proportion. It was as if the recording itself didn't exist. That moment shattered something in me. Because if even proof isn't proof, then what can be trusted? This wasn't just gaslighting. It was gaslighting of gaslighting, and the effect on my nervous system was brutal. My body was already on edge from their triangulation and avoidance. The recordings had been my attempt to ground myself in reality. But when even that was invalidated, my nervous system spiraled. I felt hypervigilant, scanning every interaction for signs of distortion. My body was in constant fight or flight, yet paralyzed by the freeze of despair. The dismissal, avoidance, and invalidation were not just emotionally painful. They were physiological ordeals. Each one triggered my nervous system into chaos, leaving me exhausted, disoriented, and deeply distrustful, not only of them, but of myself. Step by step. The body during gaslighting. Let's break down what happens in the body during cycles like this. Step 1. Harm occurs, the nervous system reacts. Cortisol spikes, vagus nerve constricts, heart rate increases. Body registers danger. Step 2. Denial arrives. Instead of validation, you hear, "That didn't happen. You're overreacting. It wasn't abuse." The words contradict the body's signals. Step 3. Cognitive dissonance. The mind now faces a split. Trust the body, danger is real, or trust the narrative, danger is imaginary. To preserve the relationship or group bond, many people choose the narrative. Step 4. Self-doubt internalized. You begin to doubt your own perception. The heuristic forms, "I can't trust my feelings. I must be wrong." Step 5. Nervous system dysregulation. The body remains activated, but without validation, the stress energy has nowhere to go. This leads to hypervigilance, chronic tension, insomnia, or collapse into freeze. Step 6. Long-term consequences. Repeated gaslighting can lead to dissociation, alexithymia, difficulty naming feelings, and even complex PTSD. The nervous system learns not to trust itself, and the identity fractures. The Dark Triad's playbook, "What I experienced is not unique." Psychologists describe how individuals with dark triad traits, narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, use gaslighting intentionally to isolate and control. Narcissists minimize and dismiss to preserve their fragile self-image. Psychopaths use gaslighting as entertainment, enjoying the disorientation of others. Machiavellians use it strategically to weaken resistance and consolidate control. Triangulation is a classic tactic. talking behind your back, pulling in outsiders, creating a sense of rivalry or paranoia. The goal is isolation. If you feel cut off from others, you become dependent on the manipulator's version of reality. And when you try to resist, by gathering evidence, by asserting your truth, they escalate, denying even recordings, mocking your attempts, or accusing you of being manipulative yourself. This is the gaslighting of gaslighting. Why it works? Gaslighting works because it hijacks two fundamental needs, the need for belonging and the need for coherence. Belonging. Humans are wired to stay attached, even to unsafe people. When faced with a choice between trusting the body and keeping the bond, many choose the bond. The nervous system equates abandonment with death. Coherence. The brain craves a consistent story. When body signals and external narratives clash, the brain often suppresses the body to maintain coherence. Better to think I'm overreacting than to face the horror that someone I love is intentionally harming me. This is why victims of gaslighting often stay longer than they want, doubt themselves more than they should, and collapse into silence, even when they know something is wrong. The ordeals of the mind. The worst part is what gaslighting does to thought. The mind becomes a battlefield of doubt. Did it really happen? Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I can't trust myself at all. This looping self-doubt is exactly the point. Gaslighting is not about convincing you of their version of reality. It's about exhausting you into abandoning your own. And once you abandon your own reality, you can be controlled. Anchoring in research, psychological research backs this up. Cognitive dissonance theory, Festinger. When faced with conflicting truths, people reduce the discomfort by changing their beliefs, often doubting themselves to preserve a relationship. Attachment theory, Bowlby, Ainsworth. Gaslighting is most effective in close relationships, where attachment bonds make people ignore their own distress cues. Trauma theory, Van der Kolk, Herman. Repeated invalidation leads to dissociation, where body signals are numbed or ignored. Dark triad research, Paulhus and Williams. Traits of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy cluster in individuals who use manipulation, deception, and gaslighting as strategies of control. Gaslighting isn't just the manipulation of words. It is a full-body assault. It teaches you not to trust your signals, not to trust your memories, not to trust yourself. And once that trust is broken, healing becomes not just a matter of telling the story differently, but of re-establishing connection to your own nervous system. Because the truth is simple, even if it's hard to believe when you're inside the cycle. The body never lies. Gaslighting only convinces you to stop listening. Let's step into a moment. A scenario many of you listening will recognize, either in your own lives or in the lives of those you care about. You are in a conversation. The person in front of you, someone close, someone whose approval matters, says or does something that crosses a line. It might be a cutting remark, a humiliating comment, or a subtle but undeniable act of aggression. In that instant, your body knows. Step 1, the event the words land. The action takes place. Your stomach drops. Your chest tightens. Your breath becomes shallow. The vagus nerve fires a warning. Cortisol surges into your bloodstream, readying you for defense. This is not an overreaction. This is neuroception, the body scanning for danger and registering what it finds. Your nervous system doesn't need proof. It doesn't need debate. It simply knows something is wrong here. Step 2, the felt response. You begin to react. Maybe your eyes water. Maybe your voice trembles. Maybe you freeze, unable to speak. This is the body's wisdom. Tears signal distress, tremors discharge energy, and freeze protect you from further harm. These are survival responses, not character flaws. But before you can fully process what you're feeling, before you can articulate the hurt, the other person speaks. Step 3, the gaslighting statement. You're overreacting. It wasn't abuse, just 7 words, but they collide with your nervous system like a wrecking ball. Because your body is screaming danger. And now the narrative insists on safety. Your chest is still tight. Your breath is still shallow. Your heart is still racing. But suddenly those signals are under attack. Step 4, the conflict inside you. 2 realities clash. Reality 1, the body's felt truth. Reality 2, the imposed narrative. The mind scrambles to reconcile them. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I'm imagining things. Cognitive dissonance floods in. To reduce the discomfort, many people lean toward doubting themselves. Because to believe the body means facing the devastating truth. Someone I love, someone I trust, has harmed me and is now denying it. That's almost too much to bear. So the easier path in the short term is to silence the body and believe the words. Step 5, identity shifts. When this happens once, it's confusing. When it happens repeatedly, it rewrites who you think you are. The heuristic forms. I can't trust my feelings. Then I must be overreacting. Then maybe I am broken. The identity begins to fracture. Instead of seeing abuse as external, you internalize it as your own flaw. Gaslighting doesn't just deny the event, it makes you question your very self. Step 6, nervous system fallout. Meanwhile, the body is still activated. Cortisol hasn't vanished. The vagus nerve hasn't reset. Your heart is still pounding, your muscles tense. But now the signals are invalidated. The energy has nowhere to go. Instead of being discharged through validation, it becomes stuck. This leads to hypervigilance, constantly scanning for the next denial, freeze, shutting down because fight or flight feels unsafe, dissociation, leaving the body altogether, somatic symptoms, headaches, stomach pain, muscle tension. Your nervous system is living in two worlds, the one it feels and the one it's told to accept. Step 7, the ordeal of repetition. Now imagine this happening not once, but hundreds of times. Each denial deepens the fracture. Each minimization teaches the body, your signals are not valid. Silence them. Trust the other person instead. Over months or years, this leads to profound consequences. Alexithymia, difficulty identifying or naming emotions. Chronic illness, from the long-term effects of stress hormones. Complex PTSD, as the nervous system learns to distrust itself. Identity erosion, as selfhood becomes entangled with the abuser's narrative. This is the cost of hearing "you're overreacting." It wasn't abuse over and over. It's not just a sentence, it's a reprogramming. In my own life, I know this ordeal intimately. When I was in that relationship, the gaslighting was relentless. I would feel the sting of their words, the unease of triangulation, the deep distress of isolation. My body knew, it screamed at me. And yet, every time I voiced my hurt, the reply came back. You're overreacting. It wasn't abuse. At first, I fought back. I recorded conversations, thinking evidence would end the debate. But even when I showed them proof of their words, their tone, their actions captured in sound, the denial didn't stop. Instead, it escalated. They denied the recordings themselves. They told me I was manipulative for even keeping them. This was the gaslighting of gaslighting. Not only were my feelings denied, but even the evidence of denial was denied. The collapse that followed inside me was unlike anything I had ever known. My nervous system spun into chaos. Hypervigilance, exhaustion, shut down. I questioned my memory, my sanity, my worth. And worst of all, I began to question my body. Because if even proof could be dismissed, maybe my stomach aches, my chest tightness, and my tears were meaningless too. But they weren't. They were the truth. I see that now. From scenario to insight. So what does this tell us? That gaslighting isn't just about lying. It's about creating a war inside you. The body says one thing, the narrative says another, and the self gets caught in the crossfire. This is why gaslighting is so devastating. It doesn't only distort memory or perception, it corrupts the most intimate relationship you have, the one with your own body. And once that trust is broken, behavior becomes easy to control. If you no longer believe your gut, your tears, your fear, then you have no compass left. You are adrift, reliant on the abuser's version of reality. That's the ultimate goal of gaslighting. Not just silence, but dependency. Think again of that moment. The cutting remark. The body's reaction, the denial, you're overreacting, it wasn't abuse. If you've been there, know this. The body never lied. The conflict, the collapse, the despair, these are not signs of weakness. They are signs of truth colliding with manipulation. The nervous system is always the real judge. The abuser's words were never proof. Your body was. The psychology of gaslighting cognitive dissonance, the clash of two realities, in the 1950s, Leon Festinger introduced the concept of cognitive dissonance. At its core, it describes what happens when we hold two conflicting beliefs or perceptions. The tension is uncomfortable, almost unbearable, so the mind resolves it by shifting one of the beliefs to restore coherence. Gaslighting weaponizes this. When harm occurs, the body registers danger. But when denial arrives, you're overreacting. It wasn't abuse. The mind faces two realities. 1. My body says I'm in danger. 2. My partner says I'm safe. The dissonance is sharp, and in many cases people resolve it by doubting themselves. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm broken. Why? Because the alternative, believing your body, means facing the terrifying truth. Someone I love is harming me and is willing to deny it to my face. That truth destabilizes identity and attachment, so the psyche often chooses the easier path, self-doubt. This is why gaslighting is so effective. It doesn't just distort memory. It leverages the brain's natural need for coherence. Attachment theory. The pain of betrayal attachment theory adds another layer. John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth showed how early bonds with caregivers shape our nervous systems. We are wired to seek connection, even when it hurts. For a child, abandonment feels like death. For an adult, rejection can trigger the same survival panic. Gaslighting thrives in close relationships because attachment bonds make it harder to trust ourselves over the other. When the person gaslighting you is also the person you love, a parent, partner, or friend, the stakes are higher. Believing your body means risking the bond. I felt this in my own relationship. Even when the evidence was clear, even when the recordings proved their contradictions, part of me clung to the hope that maybe I was wrong. Because to accept my body's truth was to face the shattering reality that the person I trusted most was not safe. Gaslighting exploits that vulnerability. It turns attachment against you, binding you tighter to the person undermining your reality. Trauma theory. The body keeps the score. Bessel van der Kolk famously wrote, the body keeps the score. Trauma lives not just in memory, but in muscle tension, posture, breath, and heartbeat. Gaslighting creates trauma because it prevents the body from completing its survival cycle. Normally, after danger passes, the body shakes, cries, discharges, and returns to balance. But when denial invalidates danger, the energy remains stuck. The body is still activated, but without resolution. Over time, this creates a traumatized nervous system. Symptoms include hypervigilance, always scanning for danger, dissociation, numbing out or leaving the body, somatic pain, headaches, stomach issues, muscle tightness, emotional blunting, loss of joy, difficulty connecting. The body literally rewires around gaslighting, learning not to trust its own cues. This is why survivors often struggle with alexithymia, difficulty naming or identifying feelings. It's not a personal failure, it's the cost of years of invalidation. The dark triad. When gaslighting is strategy, not all gaslighting comes from fragile egos or unconscious defensiveness. Some of it is deliberate. This is where psychology's dark triad comes in: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Narcissists gaslight to protect their self-image. Admitting harm threatens their fragile ego, so they deny, minimize, and shift blame. Machiavellians gaslight strategically. For them, deception is a tool to manipulate, isolate, and control. They triangulate, drawing in outsiders, gossiping behind your back, making you feel paranoid and alone, because isolation makes you easier to dominate. Psychopaths sometimes gaslight for sport. They enjoy watching others unravel, feeding off the disorientation and distress. In my own case, I saw how triangulation became a weapon. They would involve people I had never even met, creating imaginary rivalries, sowing seeds of doubt. It wasn't random, it was intentional isolation. The more I felt alone, the more I doubted myself, the more power they had. And when I resisted, when I gathered recordings, when I showed proof, the denial only escalated. This wasn't accidental, it was a strategy. Gaslighting as identity erosion. What all these theories reveal is that gaslighting doesn't simply distort an event, it corrodes identity. At first, you doubt the memory. Then you doubt your feelings. Eventually, you doubt your entire self. Maybe I can't trust anything I perceive. Maybe I'm the problem. This erosion is the true goal. Because once you no longer trust your own nervous system, you are fully dependent on the gaslighter's narrative. They become the arbiter of reality. This is why survivors often describe gaslighting as more damaging than the abuse itself. The slap or insult hurts in the moment, but the denial corrodes for years. It teaches you to turn against yourself. The psychological spiral. Let's trace the spiral. 1. Harm occurs. The body reacts. Denial follows. The abuser reframes the harm. 3. Cognitive dissonance arises. 2. Realities clash. 4. Attachment panic triggers. To preserve the bond, you doubt yourself. 5. Trauma embeds. The body's activation has nowhere to go. 6. Dark triad strategy deepens isolation. Triangulation, gossip, and ridicule leave you adrift. 7. Identity erodes. You stop trusting your own signals. Each step strengthens the cycle, and the longer it continues, the harder it is to break free. The psychological cost. The cost is immense. Survivors of chronic gaslighting often struggle with complex PTSD, chronic anxiety and depression, difficulty trusting others or themselves, intrusive self-doubt even in safe environments, emotional numbing or alexithymia, cycles of toxic relationships, repeating the pattern. But perhaps the deepest cost is existential, the loss of trust in one's own being. Not to believe your body is to lose your compass. And without a compass, it's easy to become lost in other people's maps. Integration back to the body. And yet even here, the body keeps whispering. Even when the mind doubts, the gut remembers. Even when denial insists you're too sensitive, the chest still tightens. Even when recordings are dismissed, the tears still fall. This is where hope begins, because gaslighting can corrode trust, but it cannot erase truth. The body keeps the score, and in that keeping lies the possibility of healing. Gaslighting works by hijacking psychology, cognitive dissonance, attachment bonds, trauma responses, and even the strategies of dark triad personalities. But beneath all of that, the body never lies. The nervous system holds the truth, even when the mind has been taught to silence it. And the work of recovery is to learn slowly, painfully, bravely, to trust that truth again. Institutions and culture all use the same tactics. It's not that bad, you're paranoid at scale. Systemic gaslighting. So far, we've been looking at gaslighting in the intimate realm, relationships, families, friendships. But gaslighting doesn't stop there. It isn't only the tactic of one manipulative partner or one abusive parent. It is also the language of systems, governments, institutions, media, and even entire cultures. Because what's happening on the personal level, denial, minimization, rewriting of events, also happens at the societal level. And when it does, the nervous system is caught in the same conflict. The body knows one thing, but the official narrative insists another. The familiar phrases of systemic gaslighting, you've probably heard these before. It's not that bad. That never happened. You're imagining it. You're paranoid. Everyone else seems fine. Why are you overreacting? The same phrases used by an abusive partner show up in politics in the workplace and in media reports. The effect is identical: to create doubt, to make you question your perception, to keep you aligned with the imposed narrative rather than your own nervous system. Government and political gaslighting. Take governments, for example. When citizens protest violence, corruption, or inequality, how often do official statements downplay or deny the reality? It's not as serious as it looks. These are isolated incidents. You're misinformed. Meanwhile, the body of the citizen knows. It feels the fear in the streets, the grief of lost lives, the anxiety of economic strain. Neuroception registers threat. Cortisol rises. But the narrative insists everything is under control. This is systemic gaslighting. It creates the same inner conflict. Trust your body or trust the authority. Many choose authority because the alternative, facing the depth of corruption or harm, is overwhelming. Just like in relationships, it feels safer, in the short term, to doubt yourself than to face betrayal. Medical gaslighting. Another form is medical gaslighting. Patients, often women or marginalized people, describe symptoms: pain, fatigue, dizziness. They are told, it's all in your head. You're just stressed. You're exaggerating. Meanwhile, their bodies are screaming. They know something is wrong, but the authority of medicine, the white coat, the degree, the systemic power, insists otherwise. This isn't rare. Research shows women are more likely than men to have their pain minimized or dismissed. Chronic illnesses like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, or autoimmune conditions are often underdiagnosed because symptoms don't fit neat categories. The nervous system conflict becomes unbearable. The lived body says danger, but the institution says safe. For me, hearing this resonates with my own experience of relational gaslighting. The sensation is the same. Your truth, your signals, your pain are invisible in the eyes of the other. Workplace gaslighting. Workplaces use the same dynamics. An employee raises concerns about bullying, overwork, or a toxic culture. A response: you're not a team player. No one else seems to have a problem. The nervous system of the employee feels it clearly: the tension in the shoulders, the anxiety before meetings, the insomnia after long shifts. But the organizational narrative denies it. Once again, the individual is caught between body and story. Cultural and historical gaslighting. Cultures themselves engage in gaslighting. Whole communities have been told, it wasn't that bad. That didn't happen. Your ancestors are exaggerating. Colonial violence, systemic racism, genocide, abuse in institutions, all minimized or denied. The descendants feel the trauma in their bodies. Intergenerational research shows cortisol patterns, stress markers, and nervous system dysregulation passed down. Yet official histories often erase or sanitize these truths. This is why cultural healing often begins with naming, with saying, yes, it did happen. Yes, it was that bad. Without that acknowledgement, entire groups remain trapped in systemic gaslighting, doubting their pain because authority insists otherwise. When I reflect on my own experience of personal gaslighting, I can't help but see the echoes in the wider world. In that relationship, every denial of my feelings mirrored the way institutions deny collective pain. Every dismissal, "you're overreacting," sounded like government saying, "it's under control." Every triangulation, gossiping behind my back, making me feel isolated, felt like the way workplaces isolate whistleblowers, painting them as paranoid troublemakers. The personal and the systemic are not separate. They are mirrors. Gaslighting is a tactic of control wherever power fears accountability. The nervous system's response to systemic gaslighting. What's remarkable is how the body responds in the same way, whether it's an intimate partner or an institution doing the gaslighting. Cortisol spikes when you hear your pain denied. The vagus nerve constricts when the narrative doesn't match your felt truth. Hypervigilance sets in as you scan news reports or official statements for contradictions. Dissociation creeps in when the gap becomes too wide to reconcile. The individual nervous system becomes a political battleground. Trust your body and risk alienation. Doubt yourself and maintain the illusion of safety. The inversiverse connection. In the inversiverse, I explored the idea of corrupted heuristic bias, the subconscious rules we absorb from systems around us. Gaslighting is one of the ways those biases are programmed. If a government, a school, or a workplace repeatedly tells you, it's not that bad, the subconscious learns a rule: don't trust your perception. That heuristic shapes behavior long term. You second guess yourself, hesitate to speak up, and defer to authority. This isn't just socialization, it's systemic programming. It makes populations easier to control. The philosophical wait Hannah Arendt wrote about the erosion of truth in totalitarian regimes. When lies are repeated often enough, the danger is not that people believe the lies, but that they stop believing in truth at all. That is systemic gaslighting in essence. It doesn't just deny reality, it teaches people to stop trusting reality itself. The nervous system feels one thing, the narrative says another, and over time, the person collapses into apathy or compliance. The healing counter-move. What does it take to resist systemic gaslighting? The same thing it takes to resist personal gaslighting. Trust the body. When the news says everything is fine, but your gut feels dread, listen. When the doctor says it's nothing, but your pain persists, listen. When the workplace says no one else minds, but your chest tightens every morning, listen. The body never lies. The system may deny, minimize, or erase, but your nervous system keeps the score. Gaslighting doesn't just happen in bedrooms or kitchens. It happens in parliaments, hospitals, offices, and history books. It scales up from the personal to the political, from the intimate to the cultural. And yet the response is the same. The nervous system feels what is true. The narrative denies it. The conflict erodes trust in oneself. But here's the radical act: to trust your body anyway. To name what you feel, even when the system insists otherwise. To say, this happened, this hurts, this matters. Whether it's a partner or a government saying otherwise, the truth doesn't vanish. The body knows. Living in the fog, when I speak about gaslighting, I'm not speaking as an outsider. I know its contours from the inside. I know what it feels like to live in that fog, where words and reality never quite line up, where your body screams one thing, and the person in front of you insists the opposite. I know the way it destabilizes identity, corrodes trust, and turns life into a maze of doubt. The relationship that taught me the word. It was a relationship that first taught me what gaslighting really meant. Not the definition in a textbook, but the lived experience of it. At first, it was small things, a contradiction here, a minimization there. I'd notice a discrepancy, what was said versus what was done, and I'd bring it up. The response was quick, sharp, and always the same. You're overreacting. The phrase landed like a punch. My stomach twisted. My chest tightened. But the words told me the opposite. This isn't real. You're imagining it. That's the thing about gaslighting. The moment you try to name your reality, it's erased. Triangulation and isolation. Then came the triangulation. They would speak about people I had never even met, weaving them into our relationship like invisible rivals. They would hint at conversations happening behind my back, analyses of my behavior, judgments from others. The effect was isolating. I began to feel like the walls were closing in, as if everyone else was in on a story that I wasn't allowed to read. My nervous system stayed on edge, scanning for signs, hypervigilant. Looking back, I see how intentional it was. This is what psychologists describe in the Dark Triad playbook. Use triangulation to make someone feel insecure and alone, so they cling tighter to you. And it worked. I found myself more desperate for clarity, more desperate for reassurance, even as the fog thickened. Recording conversations, eventually, the dissonance became unbearable. My body was telling me one thing, but their words kept erasing it. I began to doubt myself so much that I did something I never thought I'd do. I started recording conversations. It wasn't about catching them out. It was about preserving my sanity. I needed proof, something external, objective, and undeniable to hold on to. Something to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. And when I played those recordings back, the truth was clear. Their words were there. Their contradictions, their denials, their tone, captured in sound. For a moment I felt relief. I'm not crazy. I can trust what I heard. But then came the next level of manipulation. The gaslighting of gaslighting. When I played back the recordings, thinking they would have to acknowledge what had been said, the denial only deepened. They dismissed the evidence. They told me I was manipulative for recording. They said I was twisting things, exaggerating, imagining. It was gaslighting squared, the gaslighting of gaslighting. Proof itself became meaningless. That was the moment something broke inside me. Because if even evidence wasn't enough, then what was left? If recordings could be denied, if reality could be erased even when captured, then maybe I really couldn't trust anything. The collapse that followed was brutal. My nervous system spun into chaos. One part of me wanted to fight, to scream, to prove. Another part froze, shut down, numbed out. The constant cortisol spikes left me exhausted. Nights blurred into insomnia. Days blurred into hypervigilance. The body doesn't lie, but living in a state where your body is constantly denied is torture. The fog of self-doubt. That's the hardest part of gaslighting, the way it turns you against yourself. I began questioning everything. Did I really hear that? Did I imagine the tone? Was I overreacting? Was I broken? Even when my gut screamed danger, I found myself overriding it, because the alternative, believing my own body, meant facing a truth I didn't want to face, that the person I loved was intentionally harming me. That fog of self-doubt is worse than the insults or the silence. At least with cruelty, you know where you stand. With gaslighting, you're suspended in mid-air, never able to land. The nervous system cost my body carried the cost. Tight muscles, stomach pain, headaches, a constant sense of being on edge. When I was with them, my nervous system oscillated between fight and fawn, either defending myself or appeasing them. When I was alone, I collapsed into a freeze, drained by the dissonance. I see now how trauma theory explains this. The danger signals had nowhere to go. They couldn't be validated, so they stuck. My nervous system was trapped in unresolved activation, a loop of stress with no discharge. Mirrors in the world. What shocked me most, looking back, is how familiar this all feels on a larger scale. When governments deny harm, when institutions dismiss pain, when cultures erase history, the sensation in the body is the same. That twist in the stomach, that doubt, that exhaustion. Gaslighting in the relationship was personal, but it echoed the systemic. It taught me that what happens in the micro mirrors the macro, and that the same nervous system mechanisms apply, whether it's one partner saying, "You're too sensitive," or a government saying, "You're paranoid." Finding the still voice again. So, how did I find my way out? Slowly, painfully, by listening again to the voice I'd been taught to ignore. That still voice inside, the one mystics call divine, the one Zen calls direct experience, never actually left me. Even in the fog it whispered, "This is real. Don't let them erase it." At first I ignored it. Then I began to tentatively trust it. I journaled what I felt before I told anyone. I listened to my breath, my chest, my gut. I noticed when my body said no, even if my mouth said yes. Each time I trusted that signal, the fog lifted a little. Each time I doubted it, the fog thickened. Healing, I discovered, wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. What I learned gaslighting taught me, brutally, what it means to lose trust in yourself and what it takes to rebuild it. I learned that sensitivity is not weakness, it is perception. I learned that recordings don't matter if you don't believe your own body first. I learned that triangulation is designed to isolate, and that the antidote is connection to yourself, to safe others, to community. I learned that no matter how many times someone says, "You're overreacting," the nervous system doesn't lie. And perhaps most painfully, I learned that sometimes love itself is the hook. The attachment bond makes denial easier than the truth. But authenticity is worth more than attachment to someone who erases you. Gaslighting leaves scars, yes, but it also leaves a strange kind of gift, an unshakable awareness that the body knows. I will never again dismiss the twist in my stomach, the tightening in my chest, the unease in my gut. I know now that those signals are sacred, that they are not flaws, not overreactions, not weaknesses, but truth. If you're listening and you've been in the fog, hear this. You are not crazy. You are not broken. Your body never lied to you. The lie was the denial itself. The path forward is not to win the argument, but to listen again to the body you were taught to doubt. That's where freedom begins, embodied practices. We've traveled a long road in this episode. We've seen how gaslighting works, not just as a manipulation of words, but as an assault on the nervous system. We've traced it step by step, from the moment the stomach clenches, to the denial that collides with that signal, to the cognitive dissonance that follows. We've looked at how it corrodes identity, how it operates in intimate relationships and in entire cultures, and how philosophy, mysticism, and psychology all point back to the same truth. The body knows even when words say otherwise. But insight alone is not enough. Gaslighting lingers in the body, and the way out begins in the body too. So let's end with some embodied practices, recognition tools, and reflections you can carry with you. Red flags of gaslighting first. Let's name the signs. These are not abstract. They are cues you can notice in real time. Minimisation. It wasn't that bad. Projection. You're crazy, when in fact they are projecting their own instability. Reversal. Harm is reframed as your fault. Isolation. Triangulating with others, leaving you feeling alone. Denial of evidence. Even proof, messages, recordings is dismissed. Attacks on sensitivity. Labeling your nervous system responses as weakness. When these appear, pause, breathe, ask, is this conversation erasing me or honoring me? Practices for reclaiming trust 1. Somatic journaling. Each time you feel something in your body, a tightening chest, a clenched jaw, a sinking stomach, write it down before you speak it aloud. Document the felt truth, even if no one else validates it. Over time, this builds a record that restores trust in your own signals. 2. Felt sense naming. Practice naming your sensations without judgment. Instead of "I'm crazy," say "My heart is racing." Instead of "I'm overreacting," say "My stomach is tight." This shifts the focus from narrative to embodiment. 3. Safe witnessing. Find at least one person who can hold your truth without erasure. Share your experiences with them. Having even a single safe witness counteracts the isolation gaslighters create. 4. Breath and grounding. When the fog of denial closes in, return to the basics. Feet on the ground, breath in the belly, hand on the heart. This anchors you to the body's truth, which cannot be erased. 5. Reality checks if possible. Step away from the manipulative environment and check with external sources. This could be a friend, a journal, or even audio recordings you keep for yourself. Not as proof for them, but as validation for you. 6. Ritual of reclamation. Create a simple ritual to reclaim trust in your signals. It might be lighting a candle each time you journal, or placing a hand on your stomach when it clenches and saying aloud, "I hear you, I believe you." Small acts of honoring rebuild trust. Integrating the lessons gaslighting convinces you that you cannot trust yourself. These practices are about reversing that lie. Each time you honor your nervous system, you repair the fracture. Each time you breathe into the sensation instead of dismissing it, You polish the mirror that gaslighting tried to cloud. The path out of the fog is not quick, but every act of self-validation matters. Closing reflection. If there is one truth I want you to carry from this episode, it is this: your body never lied. Not once, not ever. The nervous system is the real judge of safety and danger. When it told you something was wrong, it was telling the truth. The lie was the denial, the manipulation was the erasure, and the healing is the return to trust, to sensation, to the still voice that gaslighting could not silence. This has been episode 6 of The Body Knows, Gaslighting the Body. We've explored how abusers train people to distrust their own signals, how denial corrodes identity, and how the nervous system holds truth even in the fog. We've looked at gaslighting in relationships, in systems, in philosophy, in mysticism. And we've remembered, again and again, that the body never lies. But gaslighting doesn't just work through denial. It also works through resonance. We don't only doubt ourselves in isolation. We watch others around us bend, apologize, and conform. And when they do, something shifts in our own nervous system too. That's where we're going next. In episode 7, The Mirror of Others, we'll explore the science of mirror neurons and group synchrony. We'll walk through a scenario where one member of a group breaks under pressure and apologizes, and we'll trace how conformity spreads not only through ideas, but through nervous system resonance itself. And if you'd like to journey deeper, you can also explore my other project, The Inversiverse, where we dissect systems of control and perception and the unfiltered human on the fringe, where we confront shadow emotions and unspoken truths with raw honesty. Thank you for listening to The Body Knows. Until next time, remember, even when words try to erase you, your body knows. James Miller.